Welcome to the SpartanMag.com VCast. Jim Comparoni, Paul Konyndyk, Spartan Stadium. A little bit rainy today on a Tuesday. Michigan State practices every morning, as everybody knows, during the weekdays, so they already had a chance to be outside and practice. And today we spoke with Jay Johnson, Michigan State's offensive coordinator, and also Ben Van Sumeren came in, Kendall Brooks, and Daniel Barker, Michigan State tight end. Paul Konyndyk here, associate editor. We're talking about Michigan State football. And Paul, I haven't had a chance to really get your thoughts on the Washington game and Michigan State and where this team is moving forward. What were your observations of that game coming out of Seattle on Saturday?
I knew it was going to be tough, and I think I said last week in the VCast, because I got some text messages from people that said, man, you're kind of critical. You thought they were going to lose the game. I felt like that's a tough trip, east to west. We all knew, and we talked about it, we wrote about it, and until it happens, people don't really think it's going to be a big deal, but that is a big deal, making that travel, and it was a tough game to play because this is a good Washington team with good talent. And they got a quarterback, and they've got a system with Kalen DeBoer as a head coach. It's a good, proven system, and they had a trigger man. I said to you before this press conference that we were at today, can you imagine if Michigan State went down to Miami last year and they weren't able to get a sack? So there'd be no strip sack in that. You know, there would be none of the big plays on defense that ended up ultimately yielding a victory in that game. And so I think, there's a lot of things to look at. Everyone's pointing at the passing yards, but to me, it's a collective type of thing. They watch the continuous copies of tape to kind of let everybody know, hey, we all have something to shoulder in this for the blame in this loss. And I really think that the thing now is how fast can they turn the page, because they're playing one of the best teams in the country this weekend. One of the team I think is the best team in the Big Ten West this weekend, and a team that is a power running game. And if you're not right in the head for a power running game, you're gonna get caved in. And I think most of the reporter questions, they were justifiably so, were Washington based. There wasn't a whole lot of talk about Minnesota. And for me, coming off a disappointment, the only way to get past that is to to pull the Band-Aid, make the corrections like they did, and then really get after it and do a little bit of everything you can do to get better. That's what has to happen. Everyone has to be a little bit better than they were against Washington.
Yeah, and I think this is one of the tougher back-to-back games that they'll have all season. And, with Washington, I thought Washington was going to throw for 320 yards almost regardless of what Michigan State did, unless Michigan State just came out otherworldly better than we anticipated with the pass rush and then the coverage, which I didn't anticipate, but 397 was too much, obviously. There were breakdowns there, and Tucker was animated yesterday, and I think that he was taking the blame in a very, in some ways with profanity to drive home a point. But also, I thought that was a message to players and also coaching staff that we map out what we want to do, and when it doesn't get done, I'm the one that looks like an idiot. I'm the one that looks like a horse blank coach. That's what he was. He didn't come out and say it that way, but I thought that was a statement to members of his coaching staff also. I mean, there's a lot of intensity needed to get this turned around. We talked last week when we were here. I felt that Tucker, there was a little more urgency last week, maybe than usual, even more than some press conferences, because he knew how tough that Washington test was going to be. And that quarterback, the way he can process and deliver the ball with accuracy, but also with smarts, Washington was a handful. And I thought Michigan State, in order to win, it would have to be a shootout, but they didn't get the running game going in order to complement those things. And then you give up the safety for 2 points, the interception at your own 20-yard line, and you don't get Montori Foster on a deep post pattern. Any of those things that Michigan State could have kind of fudged their way and been competitive at the end. That game reminded me of two games from 1998, Paul. For those of you that are old enough to remember 1998, two games. One was Oregon, like the second game of the season. That's some of you may remember that was when Amp Campbell broke his neck in that game. Went out there. Ruben Drons was a running back for Oregon. Was one of Mike Bellotti's breakthrough teams. They were a very, very good team. It was out west, and I think Michigan State under Nick Saban lost like 48-14. And the defense was similar. It was like they were chasing their tail the whole time. And Nick Saban made some huge changes internally after that game. Secondly, in 1998. It's a talented Michigan State team. When they played Ohio State, when they were ranked number 1 in the country, I'm not saying Washington was as good as Ohio State, but Washington was so hot, got a big lead. That game when Michigan State upset Ohio State, I think Ohio State was up by 17 points at one time. But Michigan State had Plaxico Burress and Bill Burke, and they just kept chipping away, and they were in it at the end and stole it at the end. I thought this game at Washington, Michigan State was building. They were never quite out of it, and they were still moving the ball, and they were maybe one or two plays away, maybe a turnover away from getting in position to steal that win. Didn't happen. The better team won, but Michigan State coming back and staying in it, that's a credit to Peyton Thorne, and he was here today, and everybody acknowledges that this week, I would think.
Yeah, and I think the point,
and Keon Coleman and others.
I mean, the point you're trying to make is this could have turned into the Oregon game. That was one of the most brutal beatdowns I've seen a Michigan State team's stomach. Now, Michigan State, like when that safety happened, it's like, okay, you get a goal line stand, then you get the safety. Now that's where I expect something to spiral like it did at Oregon. I think Michigan State did a nice job fighting back. And the other one that could have been a death, like a nail in the coffin, is you score your second touchdown or whatever it is, and then they right before the half they come down and score. Those are like killers. And to me, like, I'm in a tent with very bad phone coverage, so it's like spotty on what I'm seeing, and I'm like, okay, Michigan State scored right before the half. I'm thinking, okay, they're in a good spot. But you know as well as I do that the
you ever explain to them about
I had to do a 20-mile hike with my son for Boy Scouts on Sunday morning. It's to help some dudes get their Eagle Scout badge, and you had to have two adults along. So that I'm going to throw it out there. Anybody out there that wants to try a 20-mile hike, either work up to it slowly or don't try it. That'll be my last 20-mile hike. But so I'm watching on my phone, and I thought, okay, Michigan State's in a good spot. But then Washington, that's a winning drive right there. They go down and score, and that was big. Now this thing could have spiraled a whole lot worse than it did. I think Michigan State did a nice job chipping away at the rock face, so to speak. But it's not satisfying, for Michigan State fans out there who wanted a win. I knew this was going to be a tough win, and I think this weekend's going to be even tougher. You'll know a lot about this football team, the character of this football team, how they respond this weekend against a power running team, a team with a great scoring defense. Part of it's because they possess the ball so much. But, Michigan State needs to take the good stuff from the second half, keep on building on it, and they need to get better at what they need to get better at, and that's a lot of different things. Special teams, defense, obviously, offense as well. They need to continue to take steps in that run game. And I wonder about that Washington game, if they had a couple more weeks with this offensive line, with these tailbacks. But the timing was right for Washington to take advantage of Michigan State, and this was their opportunity to make a huge statement under a first-year coaching staff that, hey, Washington's back. We knew that Washington had talent. They have recruited very well. That's a very good place for talent. They never have an issue that way. Jimmy Lake was a bad coach, but they did some good recruiting, and it looks like Washington's back with a coach that knows what Washington's supposed to look like and how they're supposed to play football. Yeah,
and Minnesota, a good team in different ways. And Minnesota had that season 2 or 3 years ago when they were 9-0, and they had that big showdown with Penn State and beat Penn State. But they didn't win the Big Ten West. They lost to Iowa and Wisconsin this year. This year, Iowa looks dreadful on offense so far. Wisconsin has had their problems. And Minnesota's become the popular pick to win the Big Ten West.
Minnesota's the team, because of their quarterback, he's efficient. They're the team that everyone thought Wisconsin could be if Graham Mertz was a decent quarterback. They've got the power running game. They've got a quarterback who can run it a little bit, but he can also make throws when he has to. That's what Wisconsin and Iowa don't have. Both those teams have good defenses, Iowa doesn't have a good running game, but Minnesota has the quarterback that both those teams wish they had.
That's right. And Ibrahim back at running back, last time we saw him last year, he'd rushed for over 100 yards in the first half against Ohio State, out for the year. Back this year, balance, toughness, vision, tough guy to get on the ground, good blocking. I'm still going over what Minnesota does, but, inside zone, outside zone, they'll run duo inside. They'll go man blocking with isolation on the linebacker. They mix it all up. But mainly they're coming right downhill, right into your kitchen to run the ball. Ben Van Summeren was out here for Michigan State linebacker, and he feels good about where Michigan State's run defense is going against this excellent Gopher team. But Van Summeren is one guy that needs to get better in terms of run defense. He was really good opening night in terms of spilling things and chasing things down from inside out, running to the sideline well. But coming right at him against Washington a few times, I'm sure they'll look and get some corrections on that. He needs to be better at that. Halliday needs to be better at that. They all need to be better at that. Slade, we don't know if he'll be back. They missed him this week. They missed Darius Snow every week, and they missed Henderson. I mean, Darius Snow is a guy that was going to have he might have even been the best week in and week out, the best defensive player on the team this year, and they missed him in that game against Washington, and they'll miss him this weekend. So Michigan State's got to fight through that against an excellent ball control run defense that's had 3 weak opponents, but they rank among the nation's leaders, I think number 1 in the country in third down percentage. They were like 12 out of 15 on third down against Colorado. Ball control offense up and down the roster. Taylor Morgan's been there 6 years, 4-year starter. This is going to be very difficult for Michigan State. And for Minnesota, this year with Iowa being down and Wisconsin being a little bit down, as good as they were a couple of years ago when they were 9-0 and upset Penn State, they didn't win the Big Ten West. They've done some good things, but P.J. Fleck has never won a division title. This is their chance to win a Big Ten divisional title. They don't have to play Ohio State. They don't have to play Michigan. They're coming here to play a team that was in the top 10 last week, top 10 last year. Michigan State might not be that good right now, but they've got a name, they've got a brand, and Minnesota, through 3 easy non-conference opponents, this is a game they're pointing toward to prove themselves, to take a big step toward winning the Big Ten West. Huge game for Michigan State to try to bounce back, but Minnesota is coming in with an aim, with intentions to proving themselves, which is all opponents are dangerous, but I think Minnesota's dangerous right now, Paul, in that regard.
Well, the counter to that would be people would say, well, they haven't played anybody. But I'll say this. When you run the football with power and you have a physical veteran offensive line, that stuff travels. And when that stuff plays against what they've played so far, it just comes in fresh and nasty. And that's one of the things, I think it's like, it's a veteran team. They know they haven't played anybody. Yes. They're not full of themselves. They want to come out here and they prove it. And it's not proving it by throwing it a million miles down the field. It's not proving it by doing something fancy. It's proving it by hitting a hammer against the anvil. And I don't know if Michigan State, coming off what they did, getting in at 6 in the morning, is going to be ready for that. And they have to be. And I think one of the things, really, when you look at Michigan State defensively, I thought would be a strength, their defensive line. It hasn't been what it should have been because of the injuries.
I'll tell you what,
with Slade out last week, that's huge.
Slade is a good pass rusher.
He is.
So you lose a lot of pass rush with him being out, and also it makes it easier to pass block against Windman if you don't have to command 2 people inside to Slade. Stopping the run without Slade, without Henderson, without Snow, it's going to be hard, Paul.
Yeah, it is going to be difficult, and this is going to be a huge game for Michigan State, and it's going to be a huge game for Michigan State fans to be here and make some noise. And I think that this is one of those deals where Michigan State's offense, they can't let happen to them what happened out in Washington, because you can't go empty on early drives, because if you give a team like Minnesota a 2-touchdown lead or a 3-touchdown lead, or even a 12-0 lead, that second half is going to go by really quickly with that power run game, and everybody, I think all 3 phases, I know it's cliche, but this is a game where all 3 phases have to come ready to play, and they have to do their part. Otherwise, even if they do their part, it's going to be a tough game, but it's going to be a loss if Michigan State doesn't bring its A game.
Yeah, and I don't know for sure that Henderson's out. I need to say that. I'm kind of assuming, but I've not heard any inside information if he's going to be back or not. But if he's not back, that would hurt. If and when he does come back, I would like to see Henderson out there with Kendall Brooks and see what they would look like as a pair at safety. Angelo Gross, we talked about this before. Could he possibly become more of a nickel guy? I think that's possible. They've not mentioned that. I'm just trying to look at their teams and what kind of changes might be coming, because Mel Tucker said yesterday there will be changes coming. And, stopping that run is going to be difficult. But if Michigan State can't get back to establishing the run, that takes a big tense pull out of their construct as well. The run game's got to come back. That's one area I thought Michigan State I thought they'd be over 125 yards. Washington gave up 145 yards rushing to Kent State. I know the intensity's different when a Big Ten team comes to town, but I was thinking, if they're 125, they'll get in a little bit of trouble, and you never know exactly how those yards will translate into what situations. But I thought if they rush for over 175, they'd be in good shape against Washington. They didn't come close to that. That was the biggest stunner to me, is how how promising Michigan State's running attack looked in the first two games and how absent it was in that game. Now, you get midway through the year, Broussard and Berger, a little banged up here and there, but now here comes Elijah Collins looking fresh. It wouldn't surprise me if Collins has more of a role in this game.
I would like to see him have a role because I think, I think whenever he's come in, he's done some things. And there's still that guy, I believe, in there that rushed for almost 1,000 yards.
He's looked pretty good this year.
As a youngster, and he's overcome some adversity. And I know the want to and the drive is there, and why not give him the opportunity? If you've got guys that are making mistakes, if you're not running where the blocking scheme tells you to run, and there's catastrophic errors, or you're just simply not getting the job done, everyone talks about next man up mentality. Well, Collins comes in, he makes the most of what he did with his carries, and he does deserve another opportunity. And if he doesn't get it, then go back to whomever else you have. But at this point, I think everybody has to have a sense of urgency. One way to develop a sense of urgency is to have a player competition.
And Michigan State, that schedule's looking tough down the road now. And we came into the season, and last year I thought they might be a 6-7 win season type of team that went off and won 11. I was completely wrong about that. But coming into this year, I thought without Kenneth Walker that I thought more of them than I thought last year, 12 months ago. I thought maybe they could be an 8-win team, and I would have been very impressed if they could have won 9 or 10 and surprised. 8-win team is kind of what I thought, but I would not have thought they'd have been an 8-win team if you take Snow, Henderson, and Slade out. And being an 8-9 win team, to me, that would have included a win at Washington. So to me, Paul, when you get into math, and those players being out for however long and Snow being out the whole time, and now the run game questions and the schedule is looking harder because Minnesota is a little bit better than maybe people would have thought. Washington was better. I wrote about what that loss did to the ceiling of the season. Did something turn off?
Yeah.
Oh. Good eye, Paul. Got some water flow coming down from the tunnel here at Spartan Stadium. We got some rain.
Did want to replace my laptop.
Good eye. I wouldn't have even noticed that. Paul's good at stuff like that. I forgot what I was going to say, but I wrote something about the ceiling and what the season can be, and the coaches are going to keep trying to improve, and they have an idea of how good the team can be at some point in the season. But from the outside or as observers, you're in a situation now where you lose on Saturday, you're 2-2 after 4 games, and you're 0-2 against major conference teams. You're getting into like a 6-6 type of realistic type of season. That could happen, and people need to brace themselves that can happen. And this game is key just to get up to like that 7-5 territory, in my opinion, Paul.
Yeah, it's not going to be easy.
You got Ohio State, you got Michigan out there. Well, Penn State looks a little bit better.
The other thing, too, is, when you really look at it, we talk about Kenneth Walker, but it's not just Kenneth Walker. It's a veteran offensive line, and they weren't great, but they were experienced. And I wonder now, watching some of this run stuff, that some of the struggles is how many issues is this the result of the lack of practice in spring?
The offensive line?
The offensive line, it hurts a little bit, but I'm not going to talk much longer because my laptop is on its way to getting hosed again, and yours is next. So
right, but there's some students out here that didn't bring their umbrellas to class, Paul.
Yeah. I'll give you a ride home, too.
I got my bike. I don't know how I'm going to do it. Nice day to ride my bike to the stadium at the press conference. But anyway, we'll check back with you. We'll have coverage throughout the week at SpartanMag.com. We appreciate all the subscribers. For Paul Konyndyk, Jim Comparoni from East Lansing with the Spartans, and watching the VCast, SpartanMag.com.